This video was brought to you by you, or one of you. Stick around to the end of the video to find out how you can get access to my content ad-free and early, get your name in the credits, and more for as little as £2 a month. And without further ado, please enjoy the video.
I actually was pitching this space game around, and someone was like, well, tell me more about that game where you go into other people's minds. And I was like, no, you go into your own mind. It's a meditate. And then I was like, wait, that's better. I like that better. And so I just kind of hung on to that idea in the back of my head for years.
Psychonauts is a game that launched a middling commercial return back in 2005 and nearly collapsed Double Fine, the game's developer. All of this is according to the game's director, Tim Schafer. Yet, Psychonauts somehow picked up again in attention and reception a whole decade after release. The 2015 announcement that Double Fine was taking Psychonauts 2 into development utilizing Kickstarter garnered the team over $3 million. Now, in 2026, Psychonauts is an established classic that escaped its cultic status for two main reasons. Number one is that its critically acclaimed sequel received a Game of the Year nomination at Jeff Keighley's Game Awards in 2021. And number two is that Microsoft's monopolistic plan of entrenching itself through a video game streaming service available on all platforms does have some benefits to us as consumers, and one of those is that Xbox's means of games preservation are much better than most of their contemporaries in the present year, making Psychonauts available. The history of Psychonauts is well documented, and the attention and discourse the game has received online has only grown in the last decade instead of decreasing. So why am I talking about it now? In the US, federal funding in psychology and mental health only increased by 11.1% between the years 2007 and 2017. Taking into account inflation, that's actually a drop of 4.8% in funding as the population only grows, the world gets more complicated, and mental health care is more necessitated. Here in the UK, psychology and medical mental health care are so underfunded and deprioritised that companies that prioritise supporting those with childhood sexual abuse and trauma have had to lay off staff due to poor funding. Whilst a children's video game should not be considered a valuable tool to teach psychology to anyone in the 21st century, things have gone differently than we all expected and wanted, and Psychonauts from 2005 is simply too good and too accessible a tool to introduce current children and future generations to the basic outline of mental health in an engaging way when the government, schools, and medical firms either won't tell them anything or don't have the money to do so. At the very least, alongside just being a fun piece of interactive fictitious media, Psychonauts can teach kids about how everyone thinks differently, sees things differently, and how, from all age groups and backgrounds, everyone has their own struggles and most of these are invisible. Most importantly, however, is spotlighting that not everyone's minds work with or for them. A lot of adults think that mental health is a facade for weak-minded, attention-seeking people that should be treated with medicine or ignored. Thus, Psychonauts is a valuable lesson to teach open-minded kids before they become closed-minded, ignorant adults. Despite its age, I think it's important to look at the game critically because of how excellent and capable the central concept is. As Tim Schafer alluded to through the no-clip documentary at the start of this video, the idea of going into and playing inside of people's minds, despite being an idea that seems to be chosen almost impulsively according to his disquisition, is an extremely strong one. Mental health and inner turmoil are themes that require a lot of focus to completely and tactfully engage with so that all a given piece of media has to say about them can be fully extracted. Psychonauts' premise has the capacity to educate and prompt discussion about deeply poignant and serious topics. Therefore, every time the game expresses a major flaw, it deconstructs the immersion and creates a separation between its players and itself that compromises their ability to engage with what it's trying to do. And, lastly, exploring the game's strengths and flaws and evaluating it as a whole will make a similar discussion about the game's sequel, one that I'm yet to play as of making this video, more impactful and significantly easier. What constitutes a spoiler is arbitrary. Psychonauts is a good game, I like it, and I'm going to discuss it in full. I do not feel that the game surprised me at any point despite its narrative quality, although it is ultimately up to you to decide whether you play the game before watching this video. Just know that if you are interested in anything you've seen or heard so far, this video will still be waiting for you when you get back from beating the game. So, without further ado, I invite you to enjoy my critique, analysis, and review of Psychonauts. In Psychonauts, you play as Rasputin, or Raz.
My name
Starts with a D.
is Rasputin. But everybody calls me Raz.
A 10-year-old circus runaway who feels that too many of his life choices are being made for him when he wants to be a psychonaut, a role to better society in a low-key G.I. Joe-esque setting using your latent psychic abilities. To achieve this goal, he makes himself an attendee of Whispering Rock Psychic Summer Camp alongside 20 other aspiring kids. Raz is decisively crafted as a perfect narrative 3D platformer protagonist, because his experience with acrobatics from the circus justifies the tight and versatile control inherent to every player input, and his distinct history, age, and ambition provide the character dimension and provide more for we the player to cling to as the story progresses. The setting serves as the hub, and all of the residential children are adorable, weird, and memorable little freaks. The aesthetic feels informed by a reverence and nostalgia for children's TV, but not the Adventure Time and regular show kind of kids show. Instead, think more along the engrossingly disgusting aesthetics of Ed, Ed and Eddie, The Misadventures of Flapjack, Invader Zim, or SpongeBob SquarePants. All of the children offer humorous dialogue when exploring the camp, and the distinct atmosphere that they bring cleverly enhances how much everything will be missed as the tensions of the plot rise and characters disappear. The game's structure is like if an open world game starts out with lots of filler and side quests, and as it closes in, you're only doing the main quest by design, both because the option to do other things is removed and because the tension has ramped up to a point that deviating from the main plot is just unjustifiable. The childlike facade incessantly exuded by the opening acts of the game is one of its biggest feats, because it lowers your guard to emotionally captivate and educate you whilst in a vulnerable state. Using those latent psychic abilities I previously mentioned, levels take place inside of other people's heads as physical manifestations of their minds, and the first level you can play is Coach Oleander's basic braining. Whilst it does play well and does a good job of foreshadowing later relevant plot elements, I'm going to brush past this level and discuss every other one in more thorough detail. Supposing that a few players can potentially leave even the third level still believing that Psychonauts is just another competent 3D platformer, then almost all players will leave the first level believing this to be the case. Sash's shooting gallery is visually consistent, succinct, and has tight platforming, juxtaposed with its focus on the clunky and imprecise shooting combat. Despite my own fondness for it, the time that we the player spend exploring Sasha 9's mental plane is generally considered amongst some of the worst time spent in the game for its mundanity. Sasha's bland cube of a brain does serve the idea that he is extremely regimented and on the tense cusp of a breakdown.
Oh yeah, come to Papa.
Raz, what have you done? This is not control, this is chaos. I'll try to fix it. You stay here and keep the numbers under control.
As well as this, Sasha's strict regimentation and fondness for routine do tend to indicate at the diagnostic criteria for obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. There is nothing in his characterization throughout the game that pushes against the assertion that he might have OCD, nor is there anything overtly problematic about how it is portrayed through him. However, It should be noted that reading the breakdown of his mental plane not as a consequence of Raz's intrusion, but rather as an inevitability of Sasha's untreated OCD would make Rasputin, a 10-year-old boy, the only consistently self-aware, reliable, and kept-together character in the entire game until the final level. Enforcing this is that the other member of Whispering Rock Psychic Summer Camp's faculty that we the player get to explore the mind of is far from healthy. Jay from the future here, just editing the video, and I realised that I've made a hypocrite of myself in some way. Later in the video I'm going to talk about why it can potentially be problematic to throw labels at fictional characters, especially coming from someone who does not have a professional background in psychology. So why did I mention OCD talking about Sasha 9? The reason being is that when I first wrote this script, I found examples of people online in various forums on Reddit and in Twitter finding his presentation relatable and comforting as players with OCD. And I think that is important and something that should be spotlighted and celebrated. However, I do not have the background to meaningfully impose with any professional experience that Sasha 9 could have OCD. He might not. I'm not capable of discerning that. And it is very much possible that people who have OCD could look nothing like him and present nothing in the way he does, and people who don't have it could be just like him. Sorry for this interruption. Back to the video. Mia Video's mind serves to show her bouncy and joyous personality.
Where are you?
On TV, of course, where I was always meant to be.
Alongside projecting her guilt about her self-detrimental belief that she is unable to care for children. Her level is a party, but it has a killer obstacle course for 10-year-olds to undertake to reach her. It is extremely strange when you read into it without more context than the hidden trauma vault she carries or the assumption that it's a generic platforming challenge. Other than being a somewhat clever and surprising look at the harmful projection of trauma when you try and read into it, Mia's Dance Party is a fun and colourful introduction to the gameplay's best mechanic, the levitation ball. 3D platformers, with exceptions, typically thrive when you can either jump with power or precision or both. Psychonauts typically lacks these elements until you use the levitation ball, and it all just kinda comes together after that. It's ironic then that the next level, my favourite level, does not use it. I love Lungfishopolis. Not only does my favourites level not use my favourite mechanic, it also has no psychological depth. The meaning of this level is that the big scary animal is more scared of you than you are of it. You terrorise the denizens of Lungfishopolis with news flashes cutting to Goggalore, characterising you as Godzilla.
We're here with the star of the popular sitcom Trouble in the Bubble, Buddy Finn. Buddy, what's your take on the Goggalore situation? Is he just misunderstood? No way! I hate Goggalore. I can't imagine any one of my fans siding with the monster.
Did you know that a lungfish is a real type of fish, by the way? They look nothing like the hardened war vets and rebels terrified of totally not Godzilla in Psychonauts, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. Speaking of bringing things to your attention, I do not have much to say about Lungfishopolis, so I am going to use this spare time to pad my video with lungfish facts that I will awkwardly read from a script as a university graduate of biological sciences. Skip to this timestamp on screen now if you are not interested in becoming a smarter and more intelligent person, and/or if you falsely believe you are too cool for lungfish facts. Just for reassurance before I begin, Protopterus annectens, aka African lungfish, are considered one of the least concerned by the IUCN Red List as of 2019. This means that when you think about the grace and majesty of the species, whilst you should still be invested in the climate crisis, you do not need to concern yourself with their near endangerment. The reasoning for this is that despite being a freshwater species that can't network their population with the sea, both major subspecies of lungfish have extremely high occurrence. Annectens have been identified in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Kenya, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sudan, and Togo, whereas Annectens bryanni are found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Malawi, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. They have a varied diet, but most interesting of this is that they'll eat frogs, sadly even African clawed frogs, and tree roots, and occasionally their own mussels can be digested for nutrients as a desperate measure. People familiar with the African lungfish often call them living fossils. Why? Because they have remained unchanged for nearly 400 million years, or around 400 million years. Conversely, people unfamiliar with the living fossil may call them lungfish. Why? Because they are the only fish with both lungs and gills, allowing them to respire oxygen from the air as well as submerged underwater. Why would they want to do this? Well, it's because they can walk on land, obviously. They flop around looking for water source, and they flop around looking for a water source when theirs has dried up, and leave behind what looks like footprints. And for my final fact about them, what's the alternative to walking during the dry season? Well, estivation, which is basically just hibernation for fish and amphibians. The lungfish can produce a protective mucus cocoon and furiously burrow underground. Thank you for listening. This was the entire point in the video, actually. The rest is pointless. Goodbye. I do not know if there is a resoundingly correct and unproblematic way or process by which labels of disorders and disabilities can be discussed in media where they are seemingly depicted but not explicitly stated. I am not qualified to differentiate between various neurotic, psychotic, and schizoaffective disorders. And no amount of general research for a YouTube video can equate to being an experienced professional in the realm of psychology. However, the characters seen throughout the rest of Psychonauts, whom we, the player, explore the minds of, they are residents of an asylum. And they are placed there because they experience reality differently, and supposedly present a threat to their peers and themselves. To prevent misrepresenting the game and its core aspects, and much of what has given it a strong cultural identity, and to prevent misrepresenting actual human experiences that require professional insight, I'll be discussing the symptoms presented by the game's characters using the language of the ICD-11, which is used by the UK and the World Health Organization and most of the world, just not the US. But I will not be attempting to throw diagnostic labels onto fictional characters that I am underqualified for and cannot receive critical interjection for. Without further ado, the rest of the video. The Milkman Conspiracy is the fan favourite level of Psychonauts, although it's not my favourite.
Heretic.
The soundtrack for this level irks me and became stuck in my head, derogatory, when I was lost or stuck. My relationship with the music may be intentional from the developers, and having me push through with a stressed or unclear head could have been the point. However, thinking this didn't bring me any closer to some provocative revelations about this segment of the game, and it drew my attention away from some of the more interesting and creative ideas in Boyd's mind, and it also drew me away from the game entirely when I felt I had to take a break. Anyway, the Milkman Conspiracy is still amazing, so let's talk about it. When entering Boyd's mind, it's made immediately clear that he needs help.
Where is the milkman?
Well, he's not in the graveyard, so that's the first place you should look. I'd go down there myself. But I can't get in. Operatives, optics, ocularities everywhere.
His mind is reminiscent of 1950s American suburbs, where the general public was on edge in anticipation of the Cold War. Boyd's house is filled with the scribbles and political conspiracies of the Milkman. His house makes it clear, if his personality didn't already, that Boyd is detached from reality, leading him to experience delusion and paranoia. Later in the level, upon opening his mental vaults, you'll learn that Boyd struggles with self-restraint, which is exploited by one of the game's antagonists. This series of events leads to Boyd being hypnotized into personifying the Milkman, preventing anyone from entering the asylum and burning down the asylum as soon as it's investigated. Boyd's mind is disorganized, and he speaks in riddle-based conspiracy gibberish, which cements his social isolation and detachment. Everything in his mind, every object, animal, and person has eyes and cameras permanently on Raz, highlighting his paranoia. What's brilliant about the Milkman Conspiracy isn't either of those two things though, at least not those two things on their own. Boyd's mind doesn't just attempt to present you that he is experiencing mental turmoil, but rather it uses every facet of his mind to embody the uncomfortable and inexplicable experience this entails. It is more than noteworthy that nothing here withstands logical scrutiny. You stealthily search a guarded, military-like post office to find a plunger that you use to feign your identity as a sewage worker and enter the sewers. Entering the sewers, you're met with a library surrounded by assassins and spies trying not to get killed, and inside the library you find a Girl Scout acting as an assassin who is outright murdering the spies from earlier. The process of adding sense and organizing the events and entities of Boyd's mind is so redundant and impossible that it becomes stressful when you think about it too hard. Also, the nonsense of the assassin in the library reinstates the conspiracy theming of Boyd's mind, as the 1963 murder of John Kennedy, an event famously subject to a great deal of conspiracy, was stated by the American government to come from an assassin with a sniper in a book depository.
That book came from the book depository. They must want to make us think that's where they want us to go, because they think we'll think we know they know we know, so we won't go.
For most of your time in this level, Boyd has you chasing the conspiracy of the Milkman. Surprise, surprise, title drop. Boyd treats this mysterious figure like some kind of supervillain, so when the game makes explicit that him and the Milkman are one and the same, it suggests that Boyd has been attempting to dissociate the part of himself that was invaded, which is further implied by the fact the Milkman is surrounded by mental cobwebs, meaning that it has been a long time since Boyd has been completely in touch with himself. Most of Boyd's mind lacks enemies or senses. Given that sensors protect characters' minds from foreign entities and you, it is expressed that he's vulnerable. The game even throws in frequent boss fights in the second half that, I could generously propose, suggests how Boyd feels he is at constant risk of unknown threat. Although I understand that they could serve a thematic purpose though, they, to me, felt like a contrived and disruptive way of adding conflict to a level previously without combatant enemies. The rainbow squirts and G-men throughout the level are parallels to the Psychonauts and Psychadets that Boyd has been made to be afraid of. When you finally get to release the Milkman, Boyd reconnects with himself and becomes the Milkman, but at a cost, as Boyd attacks his own senses, showing that the identity the villain has forced upon him is the real threat to his mind. Clairvoyance, the power you get from Boyd to get to this point, lets you see through through the eyes of other characters and see how they see you, cleverly repeating the themes of paranoia and insecurity in this part of the game through the gameplay. It's also easily the coolest and most creative power the game gives you, but as such, it feels extremely underutilized as a late game unlock. The lack of logical scrutiny in Boyd's mind works extremely well and is embodied by the layout and level design, but the compromise here is that the gameplay consistency is lost. It's easy to get lost and feel disorientated playing, and it felt like there was no trend between where items were hidden or how you should hunt for them. After completing the level, Boyd has reconnected with himself and his identity and has more self-restraint, but is still left to fight off the evil influence. His newfound restraint means that you must leave Boyd with the conflict of trying to burn down the mental asylum, but also wanting to refrain from doing so. Initially, I thought this was an insightful way of showing that Raz can only help characters with their problems and not cure or magic them away completely. Mental health is complex and nuanced, and to hell if a 10-year-old is going to simply cure away someone's complicated and fragile mental health that they've been suffering with for an extended period of time. In actuality, and to my dismay, this is exactly what happens. When a character you meet later lets Boyd know that it's perfectly a-okay for him to burn down the asylum, Boyd does so and is now happy and seemingly cured. As for all of the other asylum patients who weren't influenced, you cure them of their mental health issues by disturbing, entering, and altering their minds without consent. This idea in the game has to be its most problematic part. Mental health discussion and understanding have advanced exponentially since 2005, and these flaws are dated, but not apparently malicious. It's just a shame that Psychonauts tells children who play it that mental health disorders are trivial when they're dealt with easily by confronting or reorganizing someone's thoughts. This isn't subtle either. If you were to give a synopsis of Psychonauts' overall gameplay loop, Raz does this about 5 to 10 times, depending on how you see it. When Boyd finally lets you into the asylum, the second half of the game begins proper, and you can fully appreciate the contrast this offers to the vibrancy and residence at the camp at daytime. Some of the game's best humour comes from seeing the interactions between the cadets and Psychonauts at camp. They're extremely memorable and characterize the game in a way that, no doubt, played a major role in Psychonauts becoming a cult classic. The asylum really makes you appreciate this tone when it's gone. In a similar way to Fire Emblem Three Houses' structure, it makes subsequent playthroughs much more enjoyable, and you feel inclined to indulge the things that you know you'll lose later. The new collectibles in the asylum are children's sneezed out, abducted, and vulnerable brains, which is another example of how Psychonauts embodies the sort of gross, intentionally absurd humour and ideas of early 2000s cartoons. Gloria's Theatre, creatively named after the theatre in Gloria's mind that you play in, follows the Milkman conspiracy. Gloria von Guten blocks your access to an item needed for progression inside the asylum, and her fluctuating personality makes her a prickly person to get past.
Say, would you like to hear the story of how I won that award, dear boy? Or are you trying to take it because you don't think I deserve it?
No, you deserve it.
I didn't take anything from you. I didn't ask to be famous. I just wanted you to love me. Hey!
What?
You're supposed to be dead! Ah!
In her mind, you have to employ trial and error to progress the scenes of a play, using physical lights to switch the tone of the performance from happy to sad as appropriate. Subtle. This portrayal of someone who finds themselves at conflict with parts of themselves is extremely on the nose, and by focusing on just two extremes, the game fails to capture the nuance of people who struggle like Gloria, and it focuses on a layman's understanding of bipolar disorder as it's defined literally and linguistically, as two polar opposites. We learn that Gloria has developed an extremely harmful inner critic after a great deal of childhood trauma that is depicted through the play and her vaults, and fixing her in this case is done simply by removing the negative half of her personality after beating this critic in a boss fight. The game suggests that the parts of herself can't be reconciled, and that her anger and sad emotions and outbursts are wrong to have. Thus, the game not only fails to validate her experience, but it also fails one of its two portrayals of the minds of women, showing a woman who is emotional and unbalanced and fixed when calm, kind, and happy, perpetuating systemic misogyny through the game's narrative. For these reasons, Gloria's Theatre is my least favourite level in Psychonauts. Before moving on, a game that excellently portrays an experience of a woman who tries to reconcile the different parts of herself in a journey of growth and recovery is Celeste. And I highly recommend you play it if you are at all interested in any of what this video has been about so far. I do have a video on Celeste, but I wrote it at 16 years old and I published it at 17. It's not very good, and I don't recommend you watch it. The item obtained after Gloria's Theatre is one of 3 required to progress through the final stretch of the game. The next item can be taken from Fred Bonaparte, the late fictional relative of Napoleon Bonaparte. Fred is introduced as a character in conflict between 2 personalities.
Who's winning?
Nobody's winning! Want to know who's losing? The Bonaparte family name! Look, I forfeit, okay? You win. Napoleon Bonaparte wins again.
Is that the real Napoleon Bonaparte? I mean the imaginary real Napoleon Bonaparte?
This would normally set up the theme of the level, but instead of decisively portraying dissociative identity disorder with depth, or shallowly spotlighting a Jekyll and Hyde complex, the game makes it clear that the theme for the next level is strategy board gaming, and that's mainly just it. Fred is unable to win at a board game with another patient and feels he has failed his ancestor, Napoleon Bonaparte. This level, Waterloo World, creates a fictional board game where you progress by changing sides to negotiate with pieces to win the board game. With a presentation close to Catan and theming close to the Napoleonic board game Waterloo. Napoleon verbally harasses Fred for his stupidity, whilst referencing his own accomplishments. The music for this level is also a clever arrangement of Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, which commemorated Russia's defeat of Napoleon and foreshadows Fred overcoming of him also. Napoleon is also presented to be an entirely separate entity who is invading Fred and not originally a part of him. It's why Fred's mind still has senses, just pushed into smaller groups than usual. Beating Waterloo World will cause Napoleon to be proud of Fred and relieve control of his mind, and Fred will give you his straitjacket, leaving you with just the penultimate level and the final level left. Where Lungfishopolis was silly, fun, and stupid, Black Velvetopia, my second favourite level and the level capturing Edgar Taglee's mind, more aptly encapsulates the remit of Psychonauts' strengths and indicates why it's held in fond memory. The setting and level design are creative, capturing Edgar's inner struggle and his background, and elements of subtle and overt theming can be seen throughout. Edgar loves art and has developed anger issues due to his previously failed relationships, making it difficult for him to indulge in his passions or interests, football and painting.
All day she cries rose-petal tears, and I can do nothing to help her, because my creation lacks something, and it will not stand against the bull.
What bull?
El Odio.
Black velvet is a type of canvas often used for Mexican paintings, which is a style maintained throughout the visuals of Edgar's mind. Hell, even Edgar Taglee's name is a reference to the famous black velvet painter Edgar William Leeteg, who is often referred to as the father of American velvet painting. A common feature of black velvet paintings is dogs playing poker, which is also why they're a common theme in Edgar's mind. What's more, Black Velvetopia is also just designed extremely well. The charging ball that seems to embody Edgar's self-destructive anger, whilst initially seeming annoying, encourages you to re-explore areas, which is helpful on a first playthrough. The platforming also has alternate routes, and with a strong familiarity with the controls, you can bypass or speed through small chunks of the level. One of Edgar's mental vaults features his previous relationship before the breakup, and it's found hidden in a garden, showing that he has repressed this memory but still preserved it with all the same positivity. The part of Edgar's mind mine that is truly repressed is his past with the football team. His girlfriend dumped him for another man, and Edgar lost a big game for his team, spiraling thereafter. These memories are found in the sewers, meaning that even the level layout communicates his relationship with repression. Edgar's obsession with his ex can be seen when he pointlessly uses cards to build towards an impossible to reach place where his fiancée is. Raz helps Edgar by defeating his previous football associates, which would be repetitive and annoying if it weren't for the fact that they're hilarious.
That's it? Caw-caw.
And Raz makes him realise that his ex is not actually worthy of his attention. His obsession is pointless and it won't lead him anywhere. Edgar's anger is characterised by the ball, and fighting it acts as an emotional release for him, which allows him to see with crystal clear eyes. There's much less moral ambiguity about how you help Edgar. Making him come to terms with how stupid his obsession was and helping him vent his anger allows him to be happier and return to his previous interests. Importantly, he is not wrong for feeling angry or upset, but his feelings can be overcome and validated in the same breath. You're still ravaging and altering his mind for what you believe to be the better, but the process and outcome are still much less concerning than before. I was extremely tempted to take the time to break down the final chapters of Psychonauts in this video, but on rereading the script and attempting to record that section, I've realised that that would be a waste of all of our time. The final level combines Raz's mind with the main villains, and it suffers from attempting to resolve the deeply rooted issues of two characters in one fell sweep, and it trivializes serious trauma and mental health issues in the process. All of this just wasn't particularly fun for me to play. It's a very difficult, arduous, long section of the game, and the focus on progressing the narrative in ways that I do not find satisfactory or interesting, and the process of discussing this further is something that I feel is outside the reasons I outlined at the start of this video for undertaking this project. It was deeply anticlimactic for me, and the best I can say is it did leave enough room for a sequel, which I would love to discuss but have not yet played. Sorry for giving you an anticlimax with this part of the video, but the game gave me an anticlimax. Now you know how I feel. On a scale of J to G, I give Psychonauts a B for brilliant and for brains. In all seriousness, however, Psychonauts is the truest testament to the creativity and intelligence of the team at Double Fine Productions that have continued to make weird and excellent games as recently as Keeper from 2025 last year and Kiln from this year, 2026. Despite having a handful of problems that clearly date the game, Psychonauts is still a wondrous, hilarious, and engaging experience throughout. It expresses a level of creativity not commonly found in the AAA space. Psychonauts contains all the comedic and unique essence of the cartoons that inspired it, whilst hosting maturity and content that has cultivated a devoted fan base and a cult following. To further embody the ideas of early 2000s cartoons, Psychonauts' distinct and unique levels act episodically, like watching a TV show, offering plenty of variety. Each level has an Aristotelian 3-act structure with self-contained character arcs, meaning that 1 or 2 sour levels, or a bad ending, do not undermine the rest. I wholly encourage everyone to play Psychonauts who hasn't already. Psychonauts had a lot of potential as a tool to teach on the topic of mental health to a broad demographic, and I feel this potential was mostly well realised. Seeing Double Fine recultivate the fanbase and move forward from the original game has been nothing but psyched for Psychonauts 2, and I hope that nearly 20 years has brought the game to a spot where it can educate the contemporary audience, myself included. Thank you for making it this far into the video. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit notification bell, all that jazz. And if you didn't enjoy and you somehow made it this far watching out of spite or something, then I highly recommend you leave a like out of spite, and spite subscribe as well. If you want to support what I do, you should check out my Patreon. All members from £2 a month up get access to all my videos early and ad-free. That would include the partner video to this one, where I talk about why it took so long to make the Psychonauts video and the thought process that went into making this one. You would also get your name in the credits of all my videos, and you would get access to exclusive content where I talk about the things I've watched, the things I've played. Monthly media, basically. For £3 a month, your name would appear bold and purple atop the credits, and you would get to ask the questions that I will answer in my Q&A videos. For £5 a month, you would get access to all those things, obviously, and you would get your name read out loud atop the credits, and you would get to vote on what content I produce in the future. For £10 a month, the highest available tier, again, you get everything in the lower tiers, and you would get to ask questions that I don't just answer in my Q&As, but I answer atop the credits in all my main videos, like this kind of like the segment you're watching now. And also you would get access to behind the scenes videos where I talk about the things I'm working on, the ideas I've scrapped, and other projects I have that aren't quite video related. And if you don't like memberships, perfectly understandable. Unfortunately, I can't offer any rewards, but you could support me through Ko-fi as well. Thank you very much. I think that's everything. TTFN, that means ta-ta for now. Bosh.